Women make up nearly 50% of all gamers, yet only a small percentage of women play esports professionally. It's time to figure out how to change that. The Knights want to empower women to build their esports empire. Along with our partner PNC Bank, we are adamant about creating a more equitable future for gamers. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, so we'll be tackling the issue from all angles, featuring insights from a variety of subject matter experts and professionals. I'm Kat DeShields Moon with the Knights. Welcome to the Women in Esports Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Season 2 finale of the Women in Esports Podcast presented by the Pittsburgh Knights and PNC. We have had an amazing group of guests join us this season, and we've covered a lot of territory related to growing and evolving the esports and gaming scene. We've talked about managing mental health and creating more inclusive and diverse environments, to behind the scenes look at some superstar women working in the esports industry. So if you missed an episode, make sure you go back and check it out. You can head over to the Knights YouTube channel to do so. Today, I am so excited to join my colleagues at the Pittsburgh Knights to take a moment to reflect on what the organization has accomplished over the past year, initiatives on the horizon, and how we are going to make 2022 an epic year. Spoiler alert, 200 tournaments. No cap, for real. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's jump right in with some quick introductions. Valerie is joining us remotely, and we will start with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me today. As Kat said, my name is Valerie, but I actually also go by Silver in the online world. I joined Pittsburgh Knights in May 2021 as their esports coordinator. So as esports coordinator, I get to manage and work with all of our competitive teams, content creators, and streamers. Basically, I have my hands in everything esports related to the company. But before that, my expertise was actually primarily in esports events. I project managed a lot of production and broadcasts for live shows and also founded my own company. But yeah, I'm super excited to be digitally here with everybody today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us from home, Valerie. Let's go right on down the table.
So hello, I'm Matt Roche with the Pittsburgh Knights. I am as you guys know, the Director of Business Development, but I work with all of our partners to make sure that we're doing cool activations, new events, anything that really has any type of sponsors or brands attached to it, including this with PNC. That kind of comes through my wheelhouse and department. So great to be here.
Oh, so excited.
And I'm Angelica. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Pittsburgh Knights. I get to work with a lot of great external partners and really help tell the story of the Knights.
I'm James O'Connor. I am the president of the Knights, and I'm excited to help organize our team to do cool stuff.
I love it. And I'm your host, Kat DeShields Moon. Welcome all to the Women in Esports Podcast. I'm excited. So let's dive right into some questions. So I have to ask, just because I always learn so much doing these podcasts, and it's impossible for me to pick my favorite because I actually love them all. But is there a favorite speaker or something that resonated with y'all from some of seasons 2's content?
Yeah, so I'll say for sure. Well, first, I really enjoyed the conversation about girl gamers. As you know, I think that was a really important conversation to have. And the other episode that I really liked was talking to Avrin and Dimitri. It was really interesting, I think, to hear their take on being women working in the esports industry, because in some ways I definitely related. And then in other ways I was like, wow, their experience is different than mine. And so I do think that it's important to have space for people who are having different experiences, and to know that there's sort of a wide range of what it means to be in the esports industry. I think we sort of do sort of a blanket generalization a lot of times about esports, but that's not always the case.
Right.
You know, there are, so some of the things that she was talking about, well, the one thing that I really thought was interesting when she talked about trickle up effect, and it's so true. And that's sort of like at the core of what we've talked about with with women in esports and how to get more women involved in esports at all levels. And this idea of it being a trickle up, I thought was just so well put, that if girls aren't able to play when they're young, if they're sort of getting pushed out when they're young, that it's harder for them to, have careers either playing or careers behind the scenes or in front office of esports organizations or any place in the video game industry. But at the same time, I also really feel like the esports industry is a place where women can come in and really have a huge opportunity to make a name for themselves and establish themselves as professionals, not just in the esports space, but just in general.
Right.
I think there's a lot of room for growth. The industry is still so new that it lets you come in and like take on big roles. It's not like going to work in other industries where it's very specific what you have to do and there's this very clear ladder.
Right.
So that was something that I just thought was really interesting.
No, that's awesome insight, and I couldn't agree with you more. I do really think and believe that you can't be what you can't see. So we definitely need more representation across the board in esports.
Yeah.
So everybody else that's watching, it's like, I could do that, and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like some distant fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt,
Definitely.
is there anything that resonated with you?
Yeah, I mean, all of it. Everything over the course of season 2. So, like, where my perspective, one of the things that I committed to going into it is to be a more informed listener with just kind of, because I have my perspective and we can do research online and everything else, but actually hearing it from like yourself and the other, honestly, leaders within the industry, both from the team side of things and on the game developer end and groups that are working with community aspects, that allows me to have some cool talking points, because when we're speaking to brands and partners, one of the things that we always talk about is how can we get more support around this? Like, how can we get more corporate funding to come in to do more women's focused tournaments or to do more content series like this or sign more women's teams? And there's 1,000 questions they always have. So I definitely was scurrying and taking notes over the course of all the episodes to get my talking points down and make sure that I'm able to communicate that outward. But all the topics that we covered this season have been amazing. And I think, just to tease, there's even some more cool stuff for next season that we're working on as well. So very, very exciting.
No, that's awesome. I love the concept of being an active listener, because you stand to gain so much just by listening. Even if you're an expert in what you do, your field, what you're doing. But just, you never know when there's going to be that nugget from somebody. It's like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Definitely. Yep.
And it is helpful too to like you said, you can research stuff online. Like, we can read lots of statistics. You can like read a lot about the problems out there, or you can read about, what possible solutions there could be. But it does make a difference when you're hearing somebody's personal story, when you're getting it specifically from, like I said, like Avrin's story. Some of it I was just like, totally. And other things I was like, that's different than my experience. But you're getting to hear somebody's real experiences. So I think that has been incredibly valuable through this series.
And also looking at like the conversation on social media, I think, is important, because there's always the PR articles or the press side of things. And I think that really only captures like, in a lot of cases, either the very positive or very negative elements of things that are happening. And in reality, it's much more, there's a larger spectrum of emotions from individuals that are trying to operate in this space, specifically from the women in gaming side of things that are trying to branch out into these areas. And, there's been a couple instances where I've been able to find these very, niche or microcosm conversations happening on social media, and just seeing like the back and forth from everyone. There's so many people that are just passionate about this topic. And, I don't think that there's enough mediums for that conversation to take place. So I think from our perspective as an organization, that listening piece is super crucial, because then that's going to allow us to determine, okay, what things do we need to prioritize to invest into this space? How can we communicate that outward to partners? All of those different pieces. So it's exciting to find those conversations happening, and also with like the comments that we see from the episodes that we're doing here. It's always great to kind of listen to see what the feedback is from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like, listening is so important, but also taking action from what
Mhm.
you're gleaning from the community, what is given to you is equally important. And whoa, can we talk for a second about the new Women's Rocket League team? Because I think that's amazing. I'm trash at Rocket League, but I'm
I am as
very
well.
excited. I like watching
We
it.
can use the cool skins and look like we know what we're doing, but
Right.
at the end of the day, it's
It's like,
night and day.
Nope. So, but I'm very, very excited for this initiative. So, Valerie, would you mind telling us a little bit more about how this came to be?
Just to clarify, I'm also really, really bad at Rocket League. But that aside, how the women's team came to be, for us, it was the obvious next step. We had already been running events for women and female identifying individuals in multiple esports titles, with our Sakura Cup series in Valorant, and with our Valkyrie series in Rocket League, which we can talk more about later. But at the company, we've always wanted to create accessible and inclusive events, and also empower and foster the community. And what better way to foster the community than to, run events for them to play in and empower them by putting them in the spotlight as our first ever women's Rocket League team. But the reason we ended up with Rocket League, even though we had looked at other women's rosters, we looked at Valorant, we looked at Gears of War and Apex Legends. The reason we chose this specific roster in this specific game title is because Rocket League was kind of one of our longest standing competitive esports titles. And it's kind of what we're most known for in some ways. So it just made sense, and stars aligned, one thing led to another. And now we have the most amazing women's Rocket League roster.
I'd like to highlight Valerie's role in management and support of the team. So what I set out with Garrett, who manages all of our teams and recruits the talent and evaluates what games we're going to get into, was figuring out how we were also going to hire women that were going to be on the sports management side. So I thought it was important. And something that Garrett and I discussed, that we were going to invest and spend time into picking someone, and we interviewed almost 200 people. Wow. And Valerie was by far the best candidate. And she didn't have experience, she had event experience, but she was tough, and we thought that she would do really well, and she's done exceptionally well. And we think very highly of her. And so we thought, how do we work with her in understanding talent management and basically being there to support players and coach them. So what it requires, us to do is support her in understanding how to deal with situations and how to support the players. And and I think that one of the things, if you're going to create if you're going to have women on your team, you're going to need to have women and men who are comfortable managing the diversity of that. Yep. And so that's been a dual investment and effort to do, because there aren't as many women gamers, which means there aren't as many women seasoned players, which means that there aren't as many of them graduating or retiring or whatever, or growing up to have the experience to understand what it's like to be a competitive woman in the space and be really driven, and their own issues that they have with men and women on teams. Right. And just and so I think that that's new, and I think Valerie's done an exceptional job to this point.
Can I say something too? I think that you brought up a really good point in that, maybe there isn't as much of an opportunity for somebody to come from, at least women in the space. There's not as much of an opportunity to come from being a professional player. Like, there's not as much transition of, I was a pro, I played at this competitive level, in the way that a lot of men in the space are doing, which is something that we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to figure this out. How do we get more women to go pro? But I also think it's really important to note, because I think that there's sometimes this, misconception that you have to have been at this high level to then transition into some other opportunity in the esports world, like front office or team management, like Valerie's doing. But that's not the case. Yeah. You know what I mean? We can take people who are passionate about esports, excited, who have been involved in other ways. You don't
Right.
have to have come up from this channel of being a professional competitive player. And I think that it's important to try to cultivate people so that you can get more women into those roles.
Mhm.
You have
Yeah.
to be able to
There's a limited pool of women who have that competitive
who have that competitive
experience.
experience. So you
Yeah.
don't want to limit the amount of people who can work in these positions just because they haven't had the competitive
Right.
experience.
Absolutely.
Well, and a credit to Valerie, she reached out and said, "Hey, I want to do better with the team, and can we sit down and talk and and we're getting into it." So like not the women's team, but just in general.
Mhm.
And so that was a cool thing, and I think that when you find somebody as engaging as she is and positive, you want to continue to invest, and so it's been a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And 2 points here. One is like the passion that you see in the community that's around esports is unparalleled. So there's people who know more about some esports titles than I did working for an esports organization. It's like, oh, okay, all right, learned something new today. So I love your point, both your points about not relying on, oh, you have to be pro in
Mhm.
order to get to this next space,
Mhm.
because there's such a wealth of experiences, knowledge, but the passion factor, is so important. And kudos for going through 200 applications, to
Well,
find
that's
the right
Rose.
person.
There's another powerful woman in our company named Rose, and she has taken the brunt of making sure that we pick good people.
Yeah.
So she does a good job there.
No, that's excellent. And it's going to take effort like that, right? To step outside of the normal pool of who you might talk to or places that you might go looking for people, for talent, to broaden and diversify the industry. So that's awesome. Speaking of diversification and access, like the women's Rocket League team is not the only thing that the Knights have been doing, to make it easier for people to get into esports, that may be like, oh, well, I don't know. So we have the Sakura Cup. We have like the Discord server to support it on the back end. I'd love to just quickly run down some of the other programming that's in place.
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I can
Yeah,
take
go
it.
ahead.
Yeah, so we are really excited that we have this women's Rocket League team, but we know that that's not the only thing to do to help women get more, build their careers in esports, right? It can't just be about hiring pro teams or drafting women to our teams. It needs to be more than that. And we at the Knights have tried to take the approach of how can we provide women the opportunities and access and tools to actually improve their competitive prowess, right? To get better. And that's something that we've done with our women's tournaments. Like you said, the Sakura Cup has been a very popular women's tournament that we are continuing in 2022. We're also looking at other women's tournaments in other games. And we have our Discord servers, like you said. And so we have a women's Valorant Discord server. And that's specifically a place where we're hoping that these women can, and they have the opportunity to, meet like-minded people, potentially put a team together, find people who are interested in playing at the same level that they want to, and also have sort of a safe space where they are feeling like really comfortable around the other people in the server. The last thing I was going to say too is that the other thing that we have in place is sort of what we alluded to, our hiring practices. That's a really big deal at the Knights. Is are we interviewing women? Are we seeking out people that are not already here? One of the things that I learned in the last season of the podcast, I had the chance to speak with Anu Jain, who is the director of the Gender Equity Commission for the city of Pittsburgh. And one of the things she said that's always stuck with me is look around the room and ask yourself who's not there, and then get those people there. And I was like, that's so simple and easy, and like that's such a great way to sort of attack something that seems so like large. You know what I mean? Like, how do we get more diversity? Like, what do we have to do? And so we as a company, I think, have really taken that practice seriously. We have almost 40% of our staff is made up of women. Over 40% of our staff is made up of minorities. We're really interested in trying to build a diverse group on the back end, and we're trying to get that, and now we're trying to work to get that on the front end with our teams as well. It's something that's always at the front of mind, and we're always asking ourselves and pushing, can we do better? Can we look for more people? And we are trying to go farther than what's right in front of us. Who's somebody who already came up in the system because they already know it. Like
Right.
we're looking.
I think one thing too, and this has been said in other episodes, but organizations are really built as an iceberg. There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, from graphic designers to copywriters to PR professionals, marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera. So, a lot of people get stuck in this, and at least people that I talk to, brands, organizations, whatever it may be, get stuck in the mindset of, well, esports is just competitive players, and that's the area that's underdeveloped. But it's underdeveloped across the board, and so we're looking at how can we execute dedicated internship programs to provide that quote unquote path to pro on the business side of things, less so on the competitive side. But there's just a wealth of opportunity that happens behind the scenes, from full-time staff that we have to independent contractors and everything else. So it's if someone out there is super passionate about becoming a pro athlete within gaming, he or she or they don't have potentially at some point don't graduate to that level that they're hoping to get to. There's so much access and opportunity on the back end, so many hiring websites and events and everything else. So I think that's a key call out is, look for other resources, identify kind of the skill sets that you have as an individual, and then see where you can bring that to the table. Very similar to what Valerie did on our team.
No, absolutely.
So I wanted to highlight what you said about the plan. The goal is you don't need to know anyone. You just come in and start pugging in the Discord with Women's Discord. And then you might form friends, build relationships, maybe compete in a tournament, make a team. And we see it as there's like a couple steps that you need to do to grow more women teams or teams with men and women. And so one of the things that a woman at Twitch that runs a women's initiative said was that it was really helpful to me, was she basically said you need a cohort of women to create their army. And then after that, then when they run into places where they're confronted with toxicity, then they kind of have support.
Right.
So the second piece on that is she said that it's about professionalism and sportsmanship. And so what ultimately the end goal is that there shouldn't be a separation. There just needs to be more sportsmanship. So then what it needs is men ambassadors who are really holding men accountable with sportsmanship. And basically, and I think that's where the Knights want to be, is finding out creative ways where we're promoting sportsmanship. So that's the end goal, is to help create a cohort of women so that they can, and they're doing it in their own ways, but I think that's one of the goals of what we're trying to accomplish. And then allow them to make friends, teams, support them in a little bit of a broader ecosystem way. And then I think what I'm going to be asking our team to do is, how are we thinking about telling the stories of sportsmanship, women and men who are leading the charge in holding people accountable to just focus on the game and the competition and the spirit of it.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Building bridges in the city of bridges.
Right.
Totally on brand.
It's the new tagline that we need to bring in.
I didn't even think about that,
That
but
was
that's
really
cool.
good.
Yeah.
Yes, someone write that down before we forget it.
Before we jumped off this question, which is a great one, Valerie, I just wanted to check in with you to see if there's anything you wanted to add.
So the Soccer Cup series, for those that don't know, is our monthly tournament series for women and female identifying individuals in the Valorant community. And along with the Soccer Cup series, we've also announced 200 plus other events, which includes our Rocket League Valkyrie series, which is also a tournament series for women and female identifying individuals. But aside from those two specific tournament series, all of our events are co-ed events. So there's many opportunities there, and that's like honestly one of my favorite initiatives that we announced this year was all our events. But aside from our event initiatives, we also have the Women in Esports landing page on our website, which is where you can also find the link and information for this podcast with PNC Bank. But like Matt said earlier, we have a lot of cool stuff to announce coming out this year. So keep on the lookout for more of our initiatives.
So loving everything that I've been hearing, seeing so far, always a place of learning this podcast. I do want to pause for just a second because with the conversations that are currently happening around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the gaming and esports space, there's a lot of movement towards it. But I think it's important to focus on the why because that varies so much from organization to organization. So why is it important to the Knights?
Can I answer this
Of
one?
course. I love it. Didn't even finish the
Okay.
question. It's like, oh, me.
Well, so one of our goals is to figure out who the best players are in the city of Pittsburgh, who's building a city of champions. And so I'm a competitor, I want to compete, and I want everyone to have a fair shot. So when we were thinking about it, that's what, we're in Youth Places, which is a community center downtown, and we're thinking, well, where are we going to start that program? And we've had a lot of people ask us, at least in our region, can we do X? Can we get it? Can we help their school? Just a lot of things. And one, we didn't have the bandwidth yet. We had a lot of things we needed to get accomplished first to be able to be supportive. And then the second one was, well, if we're going to start, how are we not going to leave the people behind, whoever it is? And so then we thought, well, if we just did a competition across the board, who's going to enter into it? Well, right now we need to, the access to computers and internet is important. So that's where we were identifying youth that didn't have that access. And then we're working with the Heinz Endowments and other partners to support us and what we're investing in and to match and meet the effort. And there's other partners which we'll hear about soon. But having their support and being able to come and do that, what it means to me is that it's a fair competition. And I want and my thought is that some of the kids that don't have that access have a lot of grit and competition and the desire to compete. And if we give them that, I think, I just want a fair playing field. So that's what it means to me.
I was going to say, I think it's important for our organization because it's important to the people who are in the organization. I mean, ultimately, the Knights are us. It's the people who are working behind the scenes. That's the Knights. And it's something that I'm personally very passionate about. I've always cared deeply about women's sports and seeing more representation in professional sports. We see always cheering. We're from Pittsburgh, right? We've grown up cheering for the Steelers and the Pirates, and it's where are the women, right? And I've always seen esports as an opportunity for leveling the playing field.
Right.
When I learned about esports, that was the first thing that came to my mind was, oh my God, there's no physical differences in your ability to be able to play. You can't say, well, what about the locker room? You know what I mean? It's an amazing opportunity to level the playing field so that men and women could compete against each other, with each other. And so for me, that's where I'm coming from, wanting to help get more women into esports and see more of them at the pro level. And I know that other people in the company share that vision and share that desire to see more women in professional sports. So ultimately, yeah, it's important to the company because it's important to us.
Definitely. I'll just add on one piece. So I, from my seat, and I'm not super active on social media, but I've seen what women have faced in the space from the toxicity on social. And if I'm seeing it, then I can't even imagine what's actually happening behind, you know what I mean? Just in terms of the response to some of, some of these, whether it's athletes or just whoever it may be, trying to do better, within the gaming industry. So I think, echoing back to what James said, a lot of that I think starts with youth of how can we build a better infrastructure from the ground up. supplying resources across the board, but it's ultimately something that, like Angelica said, it's just super passionate for all of us. And I think that we've been seeing behind the opportunity, how easy it is with anonymous profiles for people to just say dumb things on social. And in a lot of cases, you don't realize that, hey, there's a person on the other end that's like reading that and receiving it, and that's going to impact them in some way. So even if we can change that one small aspect from not happening again, from like that individual or that user from not seeing those negative comments or whatever it may be, or creating a safe space.
All of this does not happen in a vacuum, right? So as much as the Knights have been driving progress forward, creating these initiatives, listening to the community, there have been some pretty amazing partners, that have jumped in to take charge alongside of you. I'd love to spend some time just talking about who those partners are and how they've contributed to the growth of the Knights.
Yeah, so I think, obviously the immediate call out is PNC, just from everything that they've supported. They were kind of the first group that we went to, and prior to even us, activating with anything or doing anything publicly, there was a lot of internal planning sessions of just like, what is our role within the space, and how do we create an instance where, again, we're listening to the conversations that's happening, but then we're finding ways to implement, at least a first step solution. And we don't have all of the answers to the puzzle pieces or the questions, but the resources that they've been able to provide, both from a financial perspective, but also just, they have had a wealth of experience internally on their side with the tens of thousands of employees that they have. They faced every single problem that imaginable, within breaking down gender divides and equity divides within their organization. And they're allocating a ton of resources internally with Project 257 and all of those other pieces that have just been amazing to see. So it's been great for us to just be able to rub shoulders with them and take any of the best practices that we possibly can. Obviously we have a bunch of other groups behind the scenes that have supported some of our women's tournaments previously, our active champion and official partners. When we go into conversations with them, we always say, hey, what can we do from a product or resource or funding perspective to support more of these initiatives? And I don't think there's ever been an instance where our partners have said, no, we don't want to do that, right? So it's something that's top of mind for our group. We also, through the Rocket League team, the women's team expansions, there's going to be some new partners that we're bringing on that'll be directly supporting those groups and allowing them to go to some potential LAN events and other activations and some other cool things that we haven't even announced yet. So there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes. And then, I also think it's just the partners that we have here, like yourself and investors and everyone else. I think everyone is just, this is a very easy topic for groups to get behind. And if we at the Knights can kind of be a centralized body, we don't want to, represent, again, that we have all of the answers to the questions, but rather if we can create the platform for the questions to be asked and then answered by the community or vice versa, then that allows us to then go back to our partners and say, hey, here's the next leg that we want to do, right? We want to expand to more women's teams. We want to expand to more tournaments. We want to provide financial resources to individuals around, how they can better break into the space, or maybe you have a full-time job, you're competing, pretty competitively within Rocket League, and you want to make that switch to a full-time career or to transitioning over to esports or whatever your passion is. Understanding how our partners can also provide resources to that has been really important. So the list is massive. PNC is the key call out, obviously, with them really kickstarting everything here for us and our group. But there's so many other partners behind the scenes that'll be continue to be announced, and we have new groups that we have lined up for some of these other events. And everyone's just been super supportive with everything that we've had to date.
That's amazing.
Also, not just partners, but just other people in the space
Yes.
who are supporting women in esports. It's obviously not just us. And I would say that we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of groups and just admire a lot of groups that are trying to, break down this divide. And I would say, Gallerants has been a big group that
They're amazing.
Are doing a lot of good work. The Women's Carball Championship, Game Changers with Riot, and just all of the women who are grinding and playing professionally, and the women who are grinding just to play and try to be better. Those are all of the people that are making a difference.
Yeah. when they asked me when we started the program what we should do, I said, I don't know. and I said we need to listen first, and then and get instruction. And the other thing was, I said that what I've seen is a lot of women haven't had access and opportunity to create their own teams, not to the level that the issue really is that if you make an all women's league, then and if they're learning to become the best competitors, you're really segregating them from the overall talent that is playing for them to get better. So that's a confusing conundrum that you have to solve. And then I just thought, like, how are we coaching and helping them to have the same resources and access that other people have?
Right.
So it's a complex thing, and there's so many ways you can spin it, and there's so many great people doing work. So I think that coming out of this, and I'm excited that our team is taking the next step, that we already are, but like, how are we making a consistent imprint and effort into what we're doing? So I'm excited for the next steps.
Yeah, I wanted to spend just a second drilling down on 2 points that came up over that last conversation. Matt, you mentioned about like developing a platform where questions can be asked and they're actively listening, to get that feedback. And then James, you admitted that, like, I don't know, like we need to go ask some folks and we need to listen. And I think that's so important. That's a rare trait, especially in an industry that's, kind of bravado. We have our swag,
Right.
as gamers. Because, you might look like an amateur. People, they don't know what they're doing over there. And then in the same vein, some of the answers you might receive, it could be like, oh, wow, I don't even know what to do with that.
Right.
That's a lot. So I think it's wonderful that going off into that uncertain gray area and come what may, but we just need to know,
Right.
And the way that sustainable and impactful programming has arisen from that. Just kudos to the Knights for that. I do want to ask, what are some lessons, some wins that have emerged from, asking tough questions, hearing tough answers, being willing to admit, like, we don't know, but we want to, so anything that stands out over the past couple of years?
Before you answer that,
Okay.
I'll just elaborate a little bit on, and I don't know, insecurity comes from a significant amount of people who have spent a lot of time trying to figure out the issue. And there's also just I'll call it a nervous responsibility to not try to reinvent the wheel,
Right.
or have a sense of entitlement or ego to think, well, we're going to do it better than other people. I think the goal first, what I was trying to get everyone to appreciate was, I've done programs where I've just tried to make it's easy to make these programs about yourself or your organization, but I've learned it's not. It's about, there's a lot of soldiers out there that are trying to do it, and sometimes they're fighting, there's infighting amongst groups because there's not enough support in different places, and it's really about trying to connect those groups and support the ones that are farther ahead than you if you're just starting. So that's what the goal was. It was like, that's the first step I said, was if you're going to build and support a community, you need to connect with the community leaders.
Right.
And then listen to them, and then see how you can maybe connect them together and support them. And then when you start out on your own journey to contribute in your own individual way, how are you doing something that's not duplicative, or at least it's connected to the overall space?
Right.
So that's what I don't know means.
Even thinking back to the event side of things too, I remember there was some internal conversations on, like, well, we want to break down the gender divide, but we also want to do women exclusive tournaments. And it's like, those two things seem to be counterintuitive at the start, but then when you listen to what the individuals that we talk to out in the space, they want that safe, inclusive environment, right? And that is more important to them than to have a co-ed team competing in the same tournament on day one. So that was interesting for us to look at, where it's like a prioritization of where do we allocate our assets to first. The end goal is to break down the barrier and have, men, women, or whoever competing on the same team.
Right.
But in order to do that, we need to, make these women competitors comfortable. And so there's been these, multiple microcosms of like, holy crap, like we didn't think of that from our seat here today. And I think that just ties back into the listening and then learning from that, and then trying to develop out that roadmap and going to our partners and saying, here's what we think is the next step. We're not positive that it's the next step, but we think that this is where we should take it.
I was going to say, I think that one of the biggest wins for us over the past, couple of years has just been getting comfortable trying.
Right.
I love that.
Getting comfortable trying, because it is daunting, and it is a little bit like other people are doing this. Other people are doing such great work. But then, if there are, thousands of animal shelters in the world, does that mean that we shouldn't open an animal shelter in our neighborhood? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, maybe we do have something to offer. Maybe we do have a voice. We can offer another opportunity, offer more. And that's what we've really tried to dig in on, is offering more opportunities, offering more access, offering more tools and resources to women who are interested in playing competitively. That's where we saw that we could make an impact. But it has been just it's been a big win to just know that it is important and it is okay to contribute our voice to this space and to try.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to do that. Not everything needs to be perfect. I think that's been a big win for us, to just realize that it doesn't have to be perfect, and that,
You can sense her nervousness on not wanting to do a bad job.
Right. Yeah.
it's true. But so maybe it's for me that it's been a big win. That,
But we have made mistakes too.
Yeah.
So, and it's like it's okay to go through that process. And I think, when we with any mistakes that we have made within this, or any mistakes that any group has made, because it's difficult to everyone, there's a range of emotions, and people are very passionate about this topic. So it's just about, okay, we understand that this part was wrong, or we understand that we could have done this part better, and we'll fix it next time. And just keeping the consistency across the board there, I think, is important. But listening, again, going back to that same callback.
Yeah.
I'm just excited to get to launch our the next step and tie it all in together.
No, fantastic. And thank you for opening up and sharing. I know that it's certainly going to help people that are listening to this. I do love, don't be afraid to try. I need to get that as a tattoo somewhere, because I am like, oh no, so that's amazing. Not just to hear from individual, growth and progress, but from an organization standpoint as well, adopting that. I love it. So we're not recording virtually, with the exception of Valerie, of course. We're in a pretty cool place in downtown Pittsburgh. We are in the Youth Places Knights Esports Gaming Hub, and I would love to hear more about what's happening here.
Well, I'll take that. I have a friend named Josiah. I'll tell you a story. I have a friend named Josiah. We were working in some community initiatives, and he works at the mayor's office, and he did Obama's MBK program, My Brother's Keeper, and that is to help young black men and boys connect to educational resources and for their empowerment, uniting them together to get organized and really drive focus in the next stages of their lives through their transitions. So he asked me, he said he talked to all the kids in the community, and he was trying to figure out what they wanted to do and how, tell them about all the programs that they had access and opportunity to, and the community centers and outreach, and really connecting them and letting them know resources are there when they wanted them. And he said when he talked to them, he said that every time they talked about gaming, their eyes lit up. So then he said, James, you have the Knights, you're my friend, and help me. And I said, okay. So I took I read about 80 pages of his MBK program, and I just took it and condensed it into a one page and said, is this what we should do? And what it really said was that he were looking for partners for heartbeat activities of engagement, to celebrate the to highlight when they do something aspirational, to highlight it, to get to know the individuals, and then also to engage them and connect them to opportunities and make them aware of them. So I thought, okay, cool. Now, what do I do? Well, that's just activities. That's just esports events. So how do we do that? And then he connected me, and I really leaned on him to tell me, well, who do I speak to? Because he had 4 years of being in the mayor's office, connecting to every diversity group, and he's in the Office of Diversity, which they have other offices, so he's highly educated. So I leaned on his experience, and he introduced me to Cynthia, who is the CEO of Youth Places. And hearing her goals and how they use traditional sports to engage youth for programming and access and pathways to education, I thought, okay, that makes sense. And then, but with COVID and issues and stuff, how are they staying connected? And I thought, how do we help? So, and I thought she told me about their new downtown place at the convention center. And then I came and saw it, and I was like, this is like a LAN center. This is perfect. And this is like what we grew up playing games. So I said, well, they just need some computers and some internet and some stuff, and to really kick this up a notch, and how we could participate. So we went and we contributed chairs and hardware and time and resources and planning, and it took 9 months just to get the thing conceptualized and off the ground. And Josiah was writing a lot of it, and then we contacted the Heinz Endowments, and Josiah, he and I and Julie helped write a grant, and we wrote a grant, and they funded a planning grant to help buy computers for $50,000 to come and do that. And then our partners, our sponsorship partners, were really excited to contribute, and HyperX gave some gear, and forgive me if I'm forgetting anyone, but so we're kicking it off, and the goal is to get them Xboxes to compete with Madden first, and then we're trying to get them engaged with Rocket League and other games. And so they have 6 centers. So then you're thinking, Allegheny County, not just downtown Pittsburgh, when kids are getting off from the Pittsburgh public schools, and they have transition between the next bus that they're trying to get on, or whoever's downtown that wants to to come in, they can come and have a safe space where they get to make friends. And then that's when we would connect them on Discord, so that they can create a community experience outside of being within Youth Places, so that they can support each other. Like, yo, did you see this thing? Or, hey, I need help with this. Oh, you got to check out this. And so that's where we want to think about creating a resource board for them in a community way, that we're kind of aggregating some of the great things that Youth Places and other community groups do, so we can act as that resource to just promote great things that are happening.
Right.
It's about those people that are doing amazing things, and we just want to highlight and support and connect them. So it's really easy, and use the fandom and connectivity and competition of gaming to drive people together, and then make them aware of it. So we see it as a socially responsible way to engage, to use gaming for good. And so we're excited about that. And last note, there's 5 other centers that we're going to need support for, and we're going to be trying to help, and then across Allegheny County, which we can engage those. And that's the first place that the Knights, gaming, at least in Pittsburgh, it's people are waiting for how we're going to contribute, and we're doing it now. And the community, is going to turn out, and then it's just going to be the start, because then it's going to go to schools, And then our goal is to make that level playing field. Well, if these kids have an opportunity to get trained from our coaches and get access and opportunity to that, and they get good, well, then they have good PCs, so there's no barrier, good internet,
Right.
and they're ready to go, and they're educated in the ways that the game works to compete, and then they're out there competing with a flat playing field. And so then when we start doing competitions and connecting to other schools, everything is fair, and then we have a good competition. So that's what it means.
Yeah. No, I'm excited.
I think it ties back into that youth conversation that we had earlier, where this is really just the start, and if we can, create an opportunity where fans or these kids that are fans of gaming or fans of the Knights or whatever it may be here in Pittsburgh have a safe space to come in, hone in on those skills, or just build up that community aspect or whatever it may be, both boys and girls or whoever it may be. That's going to then lead into a better environment further down the road, more access and opportunity for other initiatives virtually, like James said, through Discord, and hopefully create an instance where there's less of that divide early on between boys and girls, which then transitions to some of the things that we're seeing now on the higher end of things with gaming on the competitive side of things. So this is one of multiple centers that we're planning on building out. There's work that's being done on the back end with tapping into local area high schools and doing mentorship programs through there, in school assemblies, all of those different things as well. So we think that all of these pieces tie together with that diversity and inclusion side of things, both on the women in gaming and obviously on the youth side of things, which we feel super passionate about. So our official launch event is tomorrow. Ooh. By the time that this comes out, that'll already have happened. But super excited to get this one going, working with all of our partners, and then rolling out the other ones as well.
Yeah. I have to say, I am incredibly jealous of some of the opportunities that are coming out now. I'm like,
Same.
Where was this when I was coming through school?
Right. Exactly.
But
Same.
no, that's exciting and so needed. I absolutely love it. Well, gosh, this has been a fantastic episode. Thank you all so much for your insight and your time today. I do have a closing question. I always do. So in 2022, what do you hope to see happen in esports, either for the Knights or for the industry at large? And Valerie, since you kicked us off with the introductions, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, Kat. This question is honestly really easy for me to answer because from day one, my goal has always been the same. From the first event I've ever hosted when I was 17, my mission has always been to foster the community, whether that's fostering the community through creating inclusive and accessible events or empowering individuals in a competitive environment. So, of course, one of the things I'm looking forward to for this year at Knights is having more women's teams. We'll definitely be looking into different titles and looking to pick up another women's team for this year. But aside from Knights, for esports in general, I would love to see more structured opportunities. And structured opportunities means maybe esports courses in colleges and universities. I actually live in Canada, and esports courses is not a common thing in the colleges here. So I'd love to see more of that, or even opportunities with companies like internships, or even what we do here at Knights for our events. We pick up a lot of kind of diamond in the rough casters and talent, and we give them an environment to grow and hone their skills in. I want to see more of that from all sorts of different orgs. So as a whole, my bottom line is I just want to see more opportunities for everybody in the community, whether that be for women, whether that be for casters and talents, for players, everything.
How about you?
I'm just excited to, I'll start from the Knights perspective. We've been just working on a ton of things behind the scenes over the course of the last couple months, over the course of the last 6 months, 12 months, that finally within 2022 we'll be able to start to release. We just came out with our new 2022 events calendar, of which we have 200 scheduled events over the course of the entire year. A lot of those being women's focused tournaments as well. All of the other ones being co-ed. So that's really exciting. We have some exciting partner announcements that'll be coming up too, that'll kind of seed into the youth initiatives that we're doing in the women in gaming side of things as well. But specific to the esports industry, I'm excited, number one, hopefully to see some sort of physical event presence come back. We hope that that's something that we can get going sooner rather than later. And just seeing the continuation of, I think that we're in an explosion of content development at the moment, and just the options that are available to consumers to tune into their favorite content creator, or there's just so much access and opportunity through platforms like YouTube and Twitch. I'm excited to see what we produce, and then I'm also excited as a consumer to tune into some of the more aspects that are being produced as well.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
No, I don't have a good answer.
You
I
don't?
gotta think for a
Okay,
sec.
take your time. So your question was, what am I excited for 2022? The first thing I can say is standing up a company that is focused on so much at once is hard. And it doesn't work without the pieces. So I'm excited to get over the hump with that. And what that means is, I think just internally at the company, it's really getting our content plan going, and really, and you have been a big help to that. So thank you. You've done a great job. And obviously the events and capturing the fandom and engaging our fans in that way, and telling them who the Knights are, what we stand for, what our North Star is, what our brand values are, and really animating the logo and telling the story of what it means. I can't wait for people to actually figure it out. And once they see it, I think they'll think it's cool. And we've got a win for people to appreciate that. Really being a part of placemaking in not just esports, but being really celebrating the fandom of the games that we like, and creating access and opportunity to engage with them in a new way, specifically with some of the development we're doing in Discord. So not just around the events, but the shoulder events and that is something I'm excited for. And like Matt said, live events would be cool.
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely.
I would say that for 2022, I'm looking forward to live events,
Yes.
both ones that we may be producing and just live events in general. Those are great. One of my best experiences in esports ever was going to MLG LAN in 2016 for Counter-Strike, and it was incredible. So I'm hoping that we can get more things like that, and hopefully see more things like that locally even. But for the Knights, listening to what you said, I'm really excited to share our story. The story of the Knights, the story of the people behind the Knights. There's a lot of plans in the works to help people understand sort of where we're coming from, and like I said, just share our stories, because I think that they're going to be really relatable and inspirational. So that's what's in the pipeline for 2022.
It took a while to figure that out, and we were pretty quiet on what it is, and I think we're starting to get comfortable with it. So I think people will like it.
It'll be the biggest year yet.
Oh, that's
Asterisks.
exciting.
Hold me to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let that lion roar. I'm all about it. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. Thank you, everybody who has been tuning in over the season from home. I'm so excited for what's ahead, and I know all the programming in place and that's yet to come will have such a positive impact on esports and where it's headed and where, frankly, it needs to go. So y'all stay tuned for the premiere of season 3. I am excited. I'm hyped. Be sure to catch up on episodes 1 through 7 if you missed any of them. They're all on YouTube. They're for your viewing pleasure. In the meantime, from downtown Pittsburgh, be kind, be well, stay safe out there. See you in season 3.